Lucky. I'll be free from child support. Time for divorce.
Uh, as I was preparing for the funeral, I couldn't hide my surprise at the words suddenly uttered by my husband, John. I thought he was selfish, but I never expected it to be this bad.
There's a woman I want to marry, you know. But she hates kids, so.
So what?
Hey, if Kevin stays alive, they just keep taking money for child support and medical bills, right? Wow, what a relief.
How awful. I felt my internal temperature drop sharply. To think such a guy was Kevin's father. My mind sharpens, and simultaneously my stomach churns. I agree to the divorce.
Right. Then I'll take this house, so get out quickly.
Can you wait until after the funeral, at least?
Guess I have no choice.
Saying that, John went out somewhere. And on the day of the funeral, I read out Kevin's will. John turned pale, and the relatives glared at him with faces like demons. Well, it's time to strike back. My name is Michelle Eddington. I'm a 42-year-old homemaker. I used to work at a company doing translation work, but now I've switched jobs and take freelance translation gigs. My husband John is 45, 3 years older than me. I married him when I was 29. He was in charge of dealings with our company's clients. Our son Kevin was born the following year, but John is a very selfish man and never really participated in child care. Kevin was very frail, constantly in and out of hospitals from the moment he was born. I often felt sorry, wondering if I could have given birth to a healthier child. But Kevin diligently underwent treatment and managed to hang on for 12 years. His condition worsened around his 12th birthday, during his first rainy season. His cough wouldn't stop, he couldn't eat, and his fever wouldn't go down. I hurriedly admitted him to the hospital, but despite the drip, his symptoms didn't improve much.
Mom, I'm sorry for being admitted again.
You don't need to apologize for that. You'll get better, right?
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Kevin said weakly, with a smile. My eyes welled up at that smile, but I couldn't cry in front of Kevin. I desperately held back my tears. While Kevin finally slept a little, I called John. But no matter how many times I tried, the call wouldn't connect. Was he out on business? I stopped calling and switched to texting. It wasn't until the next morning that I got a reply from John. Seeing the content, I immediately called him. John picked up the phone, on the first try this time.
What's up, calling so early?
Don't WhatsApp me. Why aren't you here? Kevin is fighting for his life, you know.
Well, even if I go, it's not like his illness is gonna magically disappear, right? Besides, we're gonna rack up more hospital bills, aren't we? Beds aren't free, and tell the doctor to get him discharged as soon as possible.
What? How can you say that?
Oh no, can't hear you. Anyway, I'm off to work.
Hey, wait a minute. John hung up without even listening to my plea. Sure, John had always been indifferent towards Kevin, but he had never said anything this awful before. I clenched my smartphone tightly, trembling with anger. Even as the rainy season ended and summer began, Kevin's condition didn't improve. The doctor told us that it was uncertain if Kevin would make it through this winter, so I saved my work and tried to stay by Kevin's side as much as possible.
Mom, you've been staying with me from morning till evening lately. But is your job okay?
It's fine. I'm working from home properly, so don't worry.
If you say so.
Kevin seemed unconvinced, wearing a troubled expression and speaking in a voice that hinted he wasn't entirely satisfied. Knowing Kevin's gentle nature, he was probably worried that I had lost my job or that I was inconvenienced because of him. After that conversation, to avoid causing Kevin any more stress, I started bringing my laptop and working right in front of him. Kevin loved books and spent a lot of time reading during the day. He also enjoyed studying and would participate in the hospital classes when he was feeling well. I had wanted to let Kevin do everything he wanted. However, John seemed very dissatisfied with me in that regard, not only failing to visit Kevin, but also constantly complaining at home.
Hey, why hasn't he been discharged yet? He's got a private room, right? It's such a waste of money for the bed and everything.
How can you say that when our son is fighting so hard? Why don't you visit him at least once?
I'm busy, okay. You're enough for the visits.
John consistently refused to visit with such an attitude. Even though he was Kevin's father, Kevin must have felt lonely. I thought so, but I knew there was no point in forcing him to go reluctantly, so I couldn't push it further. By this time, John often came home in the early morning after drinking, and he always smelled of alcohol when we met. He said it was a business dinner, but seeing lipstick stains on his shirt from the laundry and receipts from hotels used for breaks in his suit, it seems like he's cheating. He can't make time for Kevin, but he has time for some other woman. Although my affection for John had run out, divorcing him would only sadden Kevin. That's what I've been enduring. Amidst this, Kevin's condition worsened. I get called in by the attending physician and heard something shocking.
I'm sorry, but he has about a month left.
What? Doctor, can't you do something?
Beyond this,
As I collapsed in tears, the attending physician assured me, we'll do our utmost until the end. And for about 2 weeks, we continued treatment in consultation with the attending physician, but as expected, Kevin's condition continued to deteriorate.
I'm almost, huh?
What are you talking about? There's still so much you want to do, right? Saying that while encouraging him, I shed tears where Kevin couldn't see. And finally, when the attending doctor told me that treatment was no longer meaningful, I decided to discharge Kevin to spend his final moments at home.
I get to go home.
That's right. The doctor said it's okay for a few days to change the mood.
Yay.
Even though Kevin weakly returned with childlike words, I desperately held back my tears. I informed John about it, but he just said, "Oh, really?" and casually went out somewhere. This guy is hopeless. I completely gave up on John. The discharge is scheduled for tomorrow evening, so I rushed to prepare the house and complete the discharge procedures. And finally, as I was packing Kevin's belongings, Kevin spoke up.
Hey, Mom, Do you like Dad?
Huh. At the sudden question, I stopped in surprise. Kevin, without paying attention to my reaction, continued speaking.
Dad isn't interested in me or in you, Mom. So, if you don't like Dad, I want you to divorce him and live as you should, Mom.
Kevin. Kevin must have realized that things weren't going well with John. But as a parent, I couldn't let my child worry like that and face his end. Thinking quickly, I put on a smile and replied, "What are you talking about? I like your dad. Your dad cares about you and me. He's just busy and can't come to see us often, that's all. So don't worry, okay?"
But, yeah, you're right.
Kevin didn't seem entirely convinced, but he stopped pursuing it further. Beside Kevin, who fell asleep soon after, I let out a sigh of relief. And then, 2 days later, Kevin passed away peacefully at home. Until the end, John never showed his face, and I kept holding Kevin's hand, staying by his side until the very end. Kevin, Kevin. As Kevin's body grew cold, I clung to him, crying out loud as I recalled everything from the time he was in my womb until now. The nurse who had looked after us since childhood came along with the attending physician. They mourned with me and then explained the subsequent procedures and arrangements. Then one of them took out a letter from a bag and handed it to me.
"This is from Kevin. He said to give it to you if something happened to him."
From Kevin. I took the letter and bowed deeply to the attending physician and the nurse. I couldn't thank them enough for their kindness in supporting both me, who had been alone without John's help, and Kevin, who suffered from illness. After they left, I opened a letter beside Kevin. The contents made me gasp in astonishment. What is this? Along with expressions of gratitude to me, Kevin's letter contained something shocking. I read it, and it made my blood boil. Even while the funeral director was there for arrangements, my mind was consumed with thoughts of the letter I had just read. Still, decisions needed to be made, and I proceeded to arrange a small yet intimate funeral for Kevin, ensuring it would be homely. Then, the day before the funeral, John finally showed up, still reeking of alcohol as always. I no longer had the strength to confront him. As he nonchalantly grabbed another drink from the fridge, he remarked, "You look older. Tomorrow is Kevin's funeral. Where were you?"
Just working, as I've been saying. Always complaining.
Why did I ever marry this guy? No, if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have met Kevin. My mind was a mess. Kevin's not in this world anymore.
Oh, I forgot about that.
His attitude, like he lost some distant relative or something, just got my blood boiling. However, there's no point in arguing with someone like him. Thinking that, I decided to confirm the arrangements for tomorrow's funeral.
Lucky. No more child support. Let's get divorced.
While preparing for the funeral, I couldn't hide my surprise at the sudden words from John. I always knew he was selfish, but I never expected this.
I found a woman I want to marry, but she hates kids, so.
So what?
With Kevin gone, I won't have to pay child support and medical bills anymore, right? Well, that's great.
How awful. I felt my temperature drop sharply within me. To think this guy was Kevin's father. My mind cleared, but my anger boiled over. I agreed to divorce.
Right. Then I'll take this house, so get out quickly.
At least wait until after the funeral.
Can't be helped.
Saying so, John went somewhere. And on the day of the funeral, I read Kevin's will. John turned pale, and I glared at him fiercely while he looked helpless. Now it's time to strike back. The will I read exposed John's infidelity. Until the funeral started and I began reading the will, John pretended to be a grieving father who lost his beloved son, wailing inconsolably.
So, why would you have such a letter? No, that's not it. It's a lie. It's Kevin's praying, right? Michelle, I've been busy with work and couldn't come to see you often. I felt sorry about that. But there was no need for this.
John was trying to deceive even at this point, and it was quite pitiful. I wordlessly took out the envelope from my bag and thrust the photo in front of John.
What the? Are you taking secret photos?
Is there anything to worry about being secretly photographed? Like if your relationship with the person you're seen with in this photo got exposed.
Oh, no.
With John stuttering and turning pale, I smiled and asked the relatives to pass around a few photos. Words of disgust leaked out from various places along with small screams.
Despicable.
Not even visiting his sickly son and fooling around with this woman.
The stares at John became even harsher, and he slumped down where he stood. I handed him the divorce papers. With a sudden lift of his head, John looked at me. And then he clung to me with a voice that seemed about to burst into tears.
Because you never took care of me. It was just a fling. Please forgive me. I don't want a divorce.
Not taking care of you. You're not a child anymore. And didn't I ask you several times to take care of me together? It was you who kept using work as an excuse to avoid it.
But taking care of someone is dirty.
The moment John said that, he vanished from in front of me, and I realized he was crawling on the floor. Next to him was a figure of my father-in-law, taking deep breaths through his shoulders.
What do you mean by calling nursing your own son dirty? Cut the crap already.
A parent who doesn't take care of his child isn't a parent at all. It's the lowest of the low.
Ronnie and Jillian, my in-laws, had been doting on Kevin since he was born. They celebrated every discharge with meals out, bought Kevin things he liked, and, of course, never missed visiting him in the hospital. They probably never imagined their own son could be so heartless, especially since he had been making excuses about being too busy with work. With tears in their eyes, my in-laws stared fiercely at John without bothering to wipe their wet faces. It must have been the first time John had been hit. He held his cheek in surprise, looking stunned.
Michelle, I am so sorry.
If I had known he is a man who would hurt his own son, I would have divorced him immediately. I'm truly sorry.
As my in-laws began to apologize to me, I hurriedly stopped them. My in-laws had done nothing wrong. Kevin loved my in-laws dearly, and the reason I didn't divorce John was because of them. Ronnie, Jillian, you two are not at fault at all. Look, even in Kevin's letter, he wrote thank you to both of you, Grandma and Grandpa. Stay well. Both Kevin and I love you guys.
Michelle, thank you. I'm sorry, Kevin. Oh my.
Jillian hugged me tightly and started sobbing. Ronnie, with his head down, was shedding tears. On the other side of my in-laws, John seemed to finally come to his senses. Suddenly getting up, he pointed at me and shouted,
What the hell? Why are you guys apologizing to this woman? She's just an old hag. She's nothing but a failure of a wife who can't even handle her husband.
John, hey you.
Yikes.
I stepped in front of John, stopping Ronnie from lunging at him again. Despite my smiling face, John, trembling, tried to maintain dominance by glaring at me.
What's up? You got a problem.
Not really. This is reality. There's no one here on your side. Also, make sure you return the money properly. You've borrowed money from various people, haven't you?
Why are you bringing that up?
My words made the relatives who had lent money to John uneasy. After reading Kevin's letter, I had been contacting relatives. It was because the actions John had taken, as heard from Kevin, were quite costly. The woman John was involved with was in the entertainment industry, loving flashy things like buying branded goods and traveling abroad. Because of this, John had been footing all the bills, but his salary alone couldn't possibly cover it all. Realizing this, along with informing them about Kevin, I confirmed if anyone had lent money to John. It turned out that not only John's relatives but also my own had lent money under the pretext of Kevin's medical expenses. At that time, he had vaguely promised to express gratitude and return the money, but in the current situation, the relatives who had lent money seemed to realize that John had been using the money not for Kevin's sake, but for his affair partner.
Don't mess with me. I lent it to you thinking it was for Kevin. Return the $10,000 right now.
Same here. Return the $20,000.
With these words as a starting point, demands to return borrowed amounts came from various directions. John, pale-faced, looked around at those voices. Then he turned to me with a smirk.
Michelle, we're married, right? You'll help me out, won't you?
Ha, what are you talking about? You don't care for Kevin. You don't even cover his medical expenses, let alone living expenses. You've borrowed from everywhere and used it for your own selfish desires. Unbelievable. There's no way I'll help you.
Don't say that.
With a pathetic voice, John slumped down again. It seemed he had no energy left to argue anymore. Looking down at John like that, I called out towards the entrance to deliver the final blow. Sophia, please come in.
Sophia, what are you doing here?
John, with an expression that seemed like he was about to collapse any moment, finally looked towards the entrance. A woman called Sophia approached me tentatively, her demeanor filled with fear. With minimal makeup, she looked far more modest than in the photos. I called for you. On Kevin's final day, I was hoping you could persuade the girl who was with him to attend his funeral.
Well, I'm sorry for what happened.
It's okay, don't bother with superficial words. Upon hearing my response, Sophia immediately shut her mouth tight. Her complexion, much like John's, was as pale as a sheet. I handed her a document as she reached me. I called you here today to sign this document. Please read it carefully and sign it.
$50,000. I can't afford this.
It's not for you to decide whether you can afford it or not. As I said that, Sophia looked at me with pleading eyes. Although irritated by her gesture, I had no intention of confronting her about it at the moment. Then, trembling, John stood between Sophia and me. What?
I'm at fault here. So, can't you forgive Sophia? It's just too pitiful to dim in such a huge amount like $50,000.
Why, I'm just asking for compensation for your affair. John raised an eyebrow at my words and let out a heavy sigh. While internally screaming that I wanted to be the one making that gesture, I waited for John's next words.
So, Sophia is weak, unlike you. How do you expect her to earn $50,000 selling her body? You're such a despicable person.
John,
reveling in Sophia's adoration as she clung to his back, seemed enchanted. I wasn't the only one observing the two of them mockingly. Even if I keep quiet, he'll still be pounced on by relatives. But hey, let's throw another log on the fire here. Your son is hospitalized, right?
Son.
Sophia's shoulders twitched in surprise. I continued without pause. Your son is the same age as Kevin. Seems like he's been hospitalized for quite a while. Your ex-husband took custody, right? It's tough, isn't it? Hospital bills, medical expenses, not to mention the cost of the bed. Besides child support, they're probably demanding quite a sum, aren't they?
why bring that up?
Sophia stared at me as if she were seeing a ghost. John, still frozen in surprise at Sophia's words, remained motionless. I took out documents from my bag and handed them to John. After trembling violently, John pushed away Sophia, who was clinging to him from behind.
Eek.
What's the meaning of this? Divorced? With a kid? I didn't sign up for this. Wasn't it about needing money for your family living far away?
I didn't lie. My son is also family.
Was I just dating an old flame? What happened to true love? Was it my money you were after?
Weren't you after my body too?
Saying so, Sophia took off her shoes and hurled them at John. John, furious, lunged at Sophia. The security guard, summoned by someone, intervened as the two started grappling like children. Approaching the disheveled pair with a smile, I spoke up. John, make sure to sign the divorce papers and pay the alimony. Sophia, you won't get a single penny less for your alimony. Also, from your ex-husband, infidelity is no longer just a mere flaw. It's a sickness. It seems like you're seeing a few people, but if you have that much spare time, we'll enforce the alimony, the overdue child support, and the medical expenses.
My gosh.
John remained silent, hanging his head, while Sophia was led away by the security guard, shoulders slumped. I apologized to each of the relatives for the commotion and they all kindly comforted me, tears streaming down my face. Later on, the divorce with John was finalized. We reached an agreement on the alimony amount as per the claim. This incident greatly angered both sets of parents-in-law. Furthermore, the relatives were furious about being deceived, leading to a complete fallout. It seems that the amount he embezzled was demanded back all at once, and it seems he borrowed from some shady sources. For repayment, he reportedly worked multiple jobs every day, but the repayment amount was too high, leaving him with no living expenses. Finally, unable to pay off the interest that had swollen, he was taken away by some scary guys last month. The parents-in-law don't seem to intend to file a missing person report, hoping only that he is safe, but they secretly wish he would suffer immensely, if possible. As for Sophia, she was caught cheating on every man she dated and having a child, leading to the termination of all financial support. Though she's 30 years old, being considered old for the hostess industry, she couldn't attract customers, so in the end, she relied on her parents and transferred all the alimony at once. However, afterward, she was sent to a farm on some island, where she is forced to work, with all her wages going toward repaying her parents. As for me, I moved with Kevin's portrait. I purchased a house near the sea that Kevin always wanted, and I live alone with a cat he wanted. Sometimes the parents-in-law come to visit, and reminiscing about Kevin is one of the pleasures. After that, I received another letter from Kevin addressed to me separately. In it, along with many expressions of gratitude, there was an apology for leaving for heaven ahead of me, and the content that he wanted to be my child again even in the next life was written in slightly shaky handwriting. And at the end, it was concluded with, "Mom, you just keep being you, stay lively, and live long," which made me determined to live my life true to myself for Kevin's sake. Overcoming the sadness of not being able to see the growth of my beloved child, I will continue to live each day to the fullest.
It's too much hassle to take care of you, and you're going to live here by yourself.
With those words, I sensed the door being shut behind me. Then the sound of a lock clicking made me panic. "Kevin, hey, you're still there, right? Kevin?" I called out, but there was no reply. The silence that followed only increased my panic. "Kevin, please answer." Oh no. I was in a wheelchair that I'm not used to yet. I accidentally tipped over and fell out of it. It hurts. How could this happen? I felt crushed by anxiety unless I spoke out. Where am I? Am I just going to die here alone? As I was overwhelmed by regret and sadness, tears began to flow. "Laura!" The sound of the door opening enveloped me in warmth. 3 days later, while she had the TV on, a feature about a particular store was playing.
Hey, what is this all about?
As I listened to the TV, the door burst open, and the voice of the person I despised most in the world filled the room. My name is Laura. I'm a 32-year-old housewife who works hard every day as a full-time employee of a major company. Since I was young, I've had a certain dream. I became completely enchanted by it when I saw it on TV as a child. Since then, I've studied hard to achieve that dream, and now I'm working diligently every day to save money for it.
You're doing great, but don't push yourself too hard, okay?
Thanks. But working towards my dream is really fun.
I bet. I love seeing you so happy doing what you love.
The person who fell in love with my determination was my husband, Kevin. He was a junior at my company, and our relationship started as a new employee and a supervisor of newcomers. Kevin was captivated by my efforts, asked about my dream, and started supporting me. Overwhelmed by his charms, we started dating and after a few years got married. Both of us worked at major companies, so it was feasible to allocate part of my salary to a dream fund without affecting our lifestyle. The dream that I'm pursuing, and I'm not alone in chasing it.
Laura, how's it going on your end?
Smoothly. How about you, Mary?
Of course. I'm just a bit away from reaching our target amount.
Mary is my best friend. We met in high school.
Hey, don't you think we look alike?
Really? Do we? Well, now that you mention it, our vibes might be similar, even if our eye colors aren't. It was such light-hearted conversations that brought us close, and we bonded deeply over sharing the same dream. Since then, we've been encouraging each other and working hard together to someday make our dream come true. Before I knew it, my dream had become our dream. My monthly joy is checking our dream fund account. The more the money accumulates, the more excited I get about us getting closer to our dream. However, when I checked it, I was stunned. About $5,000 have been withdrawn from our dream savings. The only people who know about this account are Kevin and Mary. Among them, only Kevin knows where the banking card is. I went straight home and confronted Kevin, who was lounging on the sofa. Hey, you withdrew my money from my dream savings without asking, didn't you?
Yeah, I borrowed a bit.
Borrowed? You know how hard I've been saving up for this.
Gosh, you're so noisy. I'll pay it back soon.
He seemed unapologetic, and I was so angry I could hardly think straight.
Seriously, an old lady over 30 chasing dreams like a kid? Isn't that ridiculous?
What? Lately, Kevin has been mocking my dreams like this.
If you have the time to pursue such a dream, then make a contribution to the younger me.
He always brings up age when he criticizes. But Kevin, you supported me, and that doesn't give you the right to just use my money.
It's fine. Our money is shared between us as a married couple.
There's some money in there that I've been saving up since before I got married. Where did you put my banking card? I managed to get the banking card back from Kevin. I need to hide this banking card somewhere he can't find it next time.
Stop nagging. If there's that much, it's okay to use a little, isn't it?
His metering was like a gong going off in my head. I'm paying for all the living expenses and rent. I don't want to hear complaints from someone who doesn't contribute a dime.
Wait.
There's a big difference in our salaries. I'm older and started working earlier, but I'm still at the top of my performance. On the other hand, Kevin's performance is so poor he's being outdone by juniors.
That's because you were my supervisor.
When was I your supervisor? Whose fault is it that someone hasn't tried to grow since then?
You know, an old lady can't sell her youth, so of course, you have to work hard to make money.
Lately, this is how quickly we start fighting. Until a few years ago, Kevin would say he was supporting me and to keep it up. But after I turned 30, he started calling me an old lady and frequently bringing up my age. If I ever talked back, Kevin would sulk and ignore me for a while, so I usually ended up apologizing to keep the peace. However, this time I was not in the mood to apologize. After our big fight, I called Mary. "I'm sorry, Mary. We agreed to save up together, and then this happened."
Well, that's Kevin's fault. Don't worry about it, Laura.
I apologized again, feeling both grateful and guilty as Mary laughed it off. We were so close to our target amount, but because of Kevin, it felt further away than ever. I couldn't help but sigh, and Mary, hearing it over the phone, chuckled.
Be careful. Your happiness might slip away. Unlike me, you're married, so some ups and downs are inevitable.
$5,000 is not just a minor thing. It was a good decision to have a separate account from Mary.
Yeah, really. We'll have to be careful with Kevin from now on.
Absolutely. Then we went on to talk about trivial things. At the time, I couldn't have imagined such a thing happening, and I thought our friendship would never break. I was on my way to a sales appointment as usual. While I was crossing the street, a car ran a red light and came barreling towards me. Lost in thought, I noticed the car too late and felt a strong impact as my body was thrown. Lying there, unable to move from the pain, I could hear the noise around me and the sound of the car driving away, right before I lost consciousness.
Laura.
Mary.
Laura, are you awake? Hang on, I'll call the doctor.
I regained consciousness to the sound of Mary's voice, which seemed on the verge of tears. I thought I had opened my eyes, but everything was pitch black. I couldn't see anything. I could vaguely sense Mary moving around frantically. Not understanding what was happening and unable to move my legs, I was filled with anxiety. Then the doctor called by Mary explained to me,
I know this is shocking, but please try to stay calm. Laura, your eyes were damaged in the accident.
To put it bluntly, I had become blind from the accident, and I also lost the use of my legs. I now faced a future where I could see nothing and would be confined to a wheelchair for life. Why me? I was so close. I was plunged into the depths of despair. With my condition, I couldn't pursue the dream I had worked so hard for. Mary was always by my side as I grieved.
Laura, I won't give up. I'll work hard enough for both of us. I'll make our dream come true and give it to you as a present. So don't give up.
Honestly, I thought about just disappearing, but Mary kept encouraging me, and somehow I managed to rethink things.
Laura.
When Kevin heard I had regained consciousness, he rushed to the hospital to see me. During my hospital stay, he stayed by my side, attentive to my needs as a blind person, and listened to my fears, helping me distract myself a bit. I truly can't thank them enough. But that was only at the beginning. Mary stopped coming to visit me. With my current condition, I couldn't even contact Mary myself. What pushed me further was Kevin's attitude. Initially, Kevin was caring and talked a lot, but gradually he spoke less and visited less often. When he did come to the hospital room, he seemed to be busy on his smartphone. I could only hear the tapping sounds. Hey, Kevin, how's work going lately?
It's none of your business.
All I got back were curt responses. I was deeply hurt by his attitude. And above all, it was hard that Mary had stopped visiting. In fact, I had entrusted Mary with a banking card for our dream savings account, thinking it was a place Kevin couldn't reach. I don't want to think it, but did she stop coming because she got hold of that banking card? Maybe Kevin isn't really worried about me at all. I became increasingly despondent. Alone in my hospital room, I spent my days crying in solitude. After a while spent living like this in the hospital, I was about to be discharged and return home.
It's okay. I'm here for you.
Filled with anxiety, I chose to be discharged because Kevin had started being kind again. After getting into the car, I soon felt something was off. The hospital and our home are just a 10-minute drive apart. However, it was clear that we were traveling much longer than that. Kevin, where are we going?
There's a place I want to stop by.
But I wanted to go straight home, and it's daunting to go out when I can't see. Sensing my discomfort, Kevin spoke gently.
The place I want to take you to is designed to be enjoyable even for those without sight. It's a diversion, and it's related to your dream, you know.
My dream. The first person that came to mind was Mary. She said she would work hard for both of us, that she would achieve our dream and give it to me as a present.
I hate to say this, Laura, but Mary betrayed you.
What? Mary did? What do you mean? At Kevin's words, I asked again, my voice trembling. I could tell that my voice was shaking.
Actually, after getting your banking card, Mary disappeared. I've been searching for her ever since. I'm sorry I've been so harsh in the hospital. I was frustrated because the search wasn't progressing.
According to Kevin, his curt behavior was because he had been searching for Mary without telling me. The reason he was always on his smartphone was that he was gathering eyewitness accounts and contacting everyone he knew. At that moment, I couldn't believe Mary had betrayed me, and my thoughts froze. Normally, I might have noticed the oddities, but I couldn't then.
But I finally found her. So, let's go confront her together.
All right. And I nodded in agreement. Kevin continued driving the car for a while, heading somewhere. I wonder if it's okay to go this far. As my anxiety grew, the car stopped.
We're here.
With Kevin's help, I got out of the car and was wheeled into what felt like an indoor space. Hey, Kevin, where are we? There's no sign of anyone here.
Of course not. This is an abandoned house.
What? I could feel Kevin's presence and voice fading away. I tried to reach out for him, but couldn't grasp anything. Suddenly, fear overtook me. Kevin, where are you? Behind me, I could hear Kevin laughing.
It's too much hassle to take care of you, and you're going to live here by yourself.
With those words, I sensed the door being shut behind me. Then, the sound of a lock clicking made me panic. Kevin, hey, you're still there, right? Kevin? I called out, but there was no reply. The silence that followed only increased my panic. Kevin, please answer me. Oh no. I was in a wheelchair that I'm not used to yet. I accidentally tipped over and fell out of it. It hurts. How could this happen? I felt crushed by anxiety unless I spoke out. Where am I? Am I just going to die here alone? As I was overwhelmed by regret and sadness, tears began to flow.
Laura,
The sound of the door opening enveloped me in warmth.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Laura.
Mary, is that you, Mary? I could feel the arms around me shaking and my right shoulder slowly getting damp. Is Mary crying as she hugs me? Why is she here? What's happening?
It's going to be okay now.
Any doubts I had were drowned out by Mary's firm voice. And then I was taken into Mary's care. 3 days later, while she had the TV on, a feature about a particular store was playing. As I listened, the door burst open and the voice of the person I despised most in the world filled the room.
Hey, what is this all about?
Oh dear, how dare you show your face? Laura, are you okay?
Yes, of course. I have some things to say, too. From his voice, it seemed Kevin was quite flustered. Mary and I greeted him.
Why are you still alive?
Obviously because I saved her.
That day, Mary had gone ahead to the abandoned house and hidden nearby, waiting for us. When Kevin left, she came out and rescued me.
Don't joke. You said you betrayed someone, right?
I did betray someone, but it wasn't Laura. I betrayed you, Kevin.
In fact, right after the accident, Kevin had approached Mary and pressed her for a relationship. Despite his pretense of worrying about me, Mary grew suspicious of Kevin, who was trying to woo her.
You were after Laura's dream savings banking card, and incidentally, my savings too.
Mary had realized Kevin's scheme. It would have been easy to reject him on the spot, but thinking he might harm me, Mary decided to play along with his plan, pretending to betray me.
What's that supposed to mean?
Kevin was stunned, apparently not expecting to have been deceived himself. After Mary transferred her own savings to a different account, she gained Kevin's trust by giving him a banking card for an empty account. She cleverly led Kevin on, ensuring he couldn't use any funds from that card, so I am deeply grateful to Mary. While Kevin was off guard, Mary bought the abandoned house he had left me in and had manipulated him by suggesting,
if we leave her in that abandoned house, no one will ever find her. That way, we can make it look like she couldn't accept her situation and disappeared.
As a result, Kevin left me in the abandoned house without any suspicion, and Mary safely retrieved me.
It's good you're simple-minded. Thanks to that, we were able to establish our dream retro cafe.
Yes, our dream was to run a retro cafe. Mary renovated the purchased abandoned house, and it just opened yesterday. And until just moments ago, it was being covered by a live TV broadcast. The broadcast on TV earlier was from that event. Kevin must have seen the live broadcast and rushed over.
It can't be. I was deceived.
Excuse us.
As Kevin was in turmoil, there was a sign of a group entering the shop. In a low voice, Mary informed me that the group was the police. Apparently, Mary had called them ahead of time.
We need to talk about Laura's situation.
I didn't do anything.
Here, please take this. It's evidence.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Then I could hear Kevin causing a commotion as he was taken away by the police. I thought I heard him calling for my help, but I ignored it.
He's gone.
Okay. With Kevin gone, the shop fell silent.
Laura, what's wrong?
Sorry, it's just. Despite finally opening our dream retro cafe, I couldn't help but burst into tears. I had worked tirelessly to create a space where everyone could relax. Yet, in my current condition, not only was managing the cafe in question, but I might just be a burden to Mary. Thinking that the initial novelty might bring in customers but might not keep them coming, I couldn't stop the tears.
There's still hope. Maybe you can still see, you know?
In fact, I had undergone eye surgery at the time of the accident. Because of this, I'm currently wearing an eye patch. However, I was told that it's highly likely that I'm blind, and even if not, my vision is significantly impaired. Weakened by my lower body paralysis, doubts about Mary's loyalty, and Kevin's behavior, I was too scared to remove the eye patch. That had led me to believe I was completely blind.
I kept my promise and made our dream come true. So let's go to the hospital together.
I nodded at her words. On a day the cafe was closed, Mary took me to the hospital. When the eye patch was removed, I could perceive light.
With glasses, we can adjust this.
Mary, rejoicing as if it were her own victory. Though I couldn't see her face, her happiness made me think maybe I could keep trying just a little longer. Afterward, I divorced Kevin. Thanks to Mary's thorough investigation into Kevin, we discovered why he had become so tyrannical. Kevin had been having an affair with a younger colleague. Moreover, that affair partner was the very person who had hit me with her car. Both were arrested for their respective crimes and ended up having to pay me a consolation money.
My best friend suffered because of him. I will never forgive him.
Mary, calm down. Even if you don't get involved, he has nothing but hell waiting for him. During an interview, I accidentally let slip about how I got into this condition and that Kevin had abandoned me. Of course, Kevin was fired. Even after his release, he would face nothing but bleak days. On the other hand, I was doing well. The consolation money allowed me to buy good glasses. With my vision somewhat restored, my motivation soared. I'm still in a wheelchair, but I can do much more now. All the handicrafts in our store are made by me, and I continue to make more in between office desks. These crafts have been well received by customers and have contributed to the store's profits. Just when the shop was thriving and I had all but forgotten about Kevin, he showed up at the store before opening.
Laura, I'm truly sorry.
Kevin came apologizing, but we ignored him and went about our usual opening routine.
Hey, you.
What?
Aren't you the guy who abandoned Laura? What do you want now? Aren't you ashamed to show your face around here?
Scolded by a customer, Kevin left sheepishly. I smiled at the customer who had chased him away from me. Thank you, David.
Not at all. I'm glad I came early.
He's a regular at the shop and was the cameraman during the live TV broadcast. He has continued to visit as a customer since the broadcast. I'm making drinks today too. Please make sure to order one.
Really? I'm looking forward to it.
You two are so obvious.
I gave Mary a wry smile, sensing she had caught on to something. I'm truly glad I decided to go through with the interview back then.
Now, we need to make sure he never appears before us again.
Wait, I can refer you to a good lawyer.
Thank you. Please do. I don't want to waste any more time on Kevin. I must keep working hard for the sake of the customers who visit us. I quickly forgot about Kevin and immersed myself in work. The two of them kindly watched over me as I worked. Sometime later,
Did something good happen? You look very happy.
yes, actually, I received a letter recently. The letter mentioned that there were people who were encouraged by seeing me work. It made me so happy that I couldn't help grinning.
When you smile like that, you really look beautiful. I love seeing you like this. I'd like to date you if you're okay with that.
His confession took me by surprise. To be honest, I was also attracted to him, which made me happy. However, I had to consider my physical condition. After I explained my situation, he said it didn't bother him. Still, I wanted some time to think it over, so we left it at that for now.
I want Laura to be happy.
Still, you know.
Anyway, make sure you have no regrets.
Yes, thank you. Things have been going smoothly for me. In stark contrast, Kevin ended up in debt. He managed to find a job, but it's low paying and he's overworked, a far cry from before. Moreover, he's apparently being harassed by the family of his affair partner. I wondered why, but apparently they told him, "You messed with our daughter, now you must take responsibility." Since he brought this upon himself, I find it hard to sympathize, so I just cheer him on from a distance. Thanks to the lawyer working hard, he can't ask me for any help and seems to be suffering quite a bit.
Serves him right.
Mary muttered after seeing the results of the investigation. I agreed with her. After that, I remarried David. I chose to reciprocate the feelings of the man who accepted me entirely. Mary, who blessed our union, seems to have found someone good as well. While Mary could only afford the abandoned house, this person helped out extensively and hurried the remodeling into the retro cafe. They were in a mutual crush for a long time, hesitant about the age difference. I was told that they decided to get married, encouraged by our presence.
It's thanks to you, Laura.
It's me who should be thankful. Because of Mary, I could find happiness. I would have given up on life a long time ago if I were alone. I'm truly grateful Mary was there for me. Will you keep supporting me?
Of course. I finally got to repay you.
I tilted my head at that remark.
You helped me back in our school days.
What? She seemed to have been isolated in middle school.
I reached out to Laura when we entered high school. Since then, you have been good to me. You didn't mock my dreams, but pursued them with me, which is why I could keep going.
Hearing that, I felt like crying. I decided to cherish this bond moving forward.
What on earth is this dish?
Huh? My mill Emily said that and threw the Tupperware into the trash. What are you doing?
Don't bring me this leftover crap.
This is just too much. I silently cleaned up the food and glared at Emily. I'm leaving. I won't come back ever again. My name is Linda, a 30-year-old office worker. I just recently married Kevin. We met at a mixer. I wasn't planning to go, but I attended because a friend needed to fill a spot, and that's where I met my fate. Kevin was so pleasant and handsome, and I had a great first impression. Talking to him was interesting, and I was drawn to him even more. We exchanged contacts and started to communicate regularly, leading to dates and meals together. Being together was always fun, and we grew closer. After several dates, he asked me out, and we started dating. our relationship went smoothly. He always planned various dates and devoted himself to me. I loved how much he cared for me. About a year into our relationship, he proposed.
Linda, I need you in my life. I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?
Yes, I'd love to. That's how we decided to get married. We immediately visited each other's parents to greet them. Kevin, being sincere and honest, made a good impression on my parents. They liked him a lot.
Please take good care of our daughter.
Yes, I will make her happy for sure. I was so glad my parents liked him. Now it was my turn to meet his parents. Nervously, I went with Kevin to his parents' house. Their house was large and old, but had a traditional vibe. Though Kevin's family have some impressive history.
Well, yeah, my grandpa used to own a famous clothing store. Although it's sold now, he built this mansion with the money from the sale, where my parents lived, and I was born.
Well, that's interesting. As we talked, we reached the entrance after the gate opened. Kevin rang the doorbell, and his mother, Emily, came out. Hi, I'm Linda.
Hello, come on in.
Emily said without much change in her expression. I guess I was hoping for a warm welcome somewhere deep inside. Seeing her cold expression, the tension rose suddenly. As we were led to the living room, there sat his father. I greeted him as I did before, and he replied without changing his expression, "Nice to meet you." The atmosphere was heavy. Kevin said, "Oh, I brought this gift," and handed sweets to his parents. It seemed to be Emily's favorite, as her expression softened a bit.
Thank you, we'll have it later.
Aren't we going to eat it now? I was surprised by her response, as I expected to have a pleasant conversation while eating the snacks. Moreover, not even tea was served since I sat down. Am I not welcomed? That thought crossed my mind. And the conversation did not flow well. Kevin seemed not to mind much and talked about wedding plans. In the midst of this, Emily said,
If you're getting married, you need to remember this.
What would that be?
You can see this house is big, right? So, a lot of relatives often gather here.
Okay.
There's a gathering every month and a banquet. You'll need to attend each one and help with the preparations. If you can't do that, this marriage won't be accepted.
That's tough. I looked at Kevin, hoping he would object, but he said, "It's almost a tradition. Try to understand." I want to marry him, but the thought of having so many family gatherings is troubling. Should I really go through with this marriage? My mind was wavering.
Well, you might not understand. This is a custom only in well-off families.
Emily said with a mocking smile. I was infuriated by her remark. Being competitive and feeling as though my family was belittled, I was very upset. That's perfectly fine. I look forward to getting along with the relatives. Her eyes widened in surprise as I spoke.
Well then, I'm looking forward to it.
She seemed competitive too, observing me closely. That day ended, and later, a meeting between both families took place. During that meeting, Emily made various hostile remarks towards me. After the meeting, my parents expressed their concern. Are you sure about marrying into that family? I understood their worry, but I loved Kevin and didn't want to back down, feeling it would mean losing to Emily, so I couldn't think of calling off the wedding. Kevin and I had our wedding, went on a honeymoon, and then started living together. About half a month later, the family gathering mentioned by Emily took place, and I attended with my husband. I wondered if the relatives would be kind or if they would be as cold as Emily. Nervously, I arrived at my in-laws' house, where Emily was waiting for me, standing firmly.
You finally arrived. Start preparing,
she said with a cold look, leading me to the kitchen. I put on an apron and stood in the kitchen with her.
You're preparing food for 20 people today.
I thought to myself, are you serious? It's not even a holiday, and we're having such a big gathering. I started cooking following Emily's instructions, thinking this is going to be tough. While I worked, she complained about everything.
Your skills are lacking. Are you even used to a kitchen? Your knife work is so sloppy.
I cook every day and consider myself quite good at it, so I didn't think I was that bad, and frankly, I thought her cutting was even sloppier. But it seemed like Emily just wanted to pick on me. I tuned her out and focused on the cooking. After all, I had to prepare meals for 20 people, which took a significant amount of time. I couldn't afford to dawdle because the relatives would arrive soon. Finally, the cooking was done, and I was exhausted. So I went to the living room to rest for a bit, but then my Phil said, "Hey, help with setting up." I was forced to prepare seats and tables, arranging cushions, utensils, glasses, and more. I wanted to take a breather, but I had to follow orders and couldn't rest. At last, the setup for the banquet was finished. I took a quick break, sipping water and relaxing my feet. Then it seemed the relatives arrived, and Emily called for me.
Hey, what are you resting for? Come and greet everyone, you lazy bum.
I was just taking a little break, and she scolded me like that. I thought she must have some personality issues. But indeed, I had to greet the relatives, so I got up, tired, and headed to the living room. The relatives had arrived in droves, and I was overwhelmed by the number. There must have been around 20 of them. When I approached, Kevin introduced me to the relatives. It felt like I had seen some of them at the wedding, but I greeted them again. They all smiled and greeted me back. The banquet began, and I served the food I prepared.
Oh, did you make this?
Yes, I hope you like it.
Let's see. Yes. Delicious. Spot on.
Thank you so much. The relatives were very kind, and when I brought them drinks, they told me to take a break and eat. Thanks to them, I could sit down for a moment, eat, and have a drink.
Thanks for preparing so much food today.
The relatives expressed their gratitude, which made me very happy. However, I was soon called by Emily.
What are you slacking off for?
She scolded me in the kitchen. I'm not slacking off. I was just talking with them.
You're supposed to serve drinks and clear dishes at this banquet. I will talk to them, so you don't need to do that.
That's just unfair. How unfair it all is. It seemed Emily just wanted to use me like a maid. And she probably didn't like that I was getting along well with the relatives. In the end, the only time I could talk to them was earlier, as I was constantly being ordered around by Emily. After the banquet ended and the relatives left, it was time for cleanup. The cleanup was even worse. Emily just gave orders and didn't help at all. Meanwhile, Kevin and his father were passed out from drinking, so I ended up having to clean up everything myself. Exhausted, I moved tables and cushions, doing all the physical work alone. Then Emily told me, "Well, you're done. You can go home now." Since Kevin was asleep, she insisted I leave alone. Feeling it was unfair, I walked to the station by myself. I was not only appalled by Emily's tyranny, but also disillusioned with Kevin. He hadn't cared about me at all while I was being overworked. He just ate and drank as he pleased, without a thought about the way back home. I realized then that he wouldn't stand up for me. The next afternoon, he returned home.
Linda, why didn't you stay over?
What are you talking about? Your mother kicked me out.
What? My mom? No way, she wouldn't do that.
But she did. I've been bullied and struggled since the party prep began. Hearing this, Kevin got angry.
Cut it out. Why do you always make such complaints? Were you hallucinating from drinking too much?
I was speechless. I hadn't expected him to distrust me and overestimate his mother so much. I had hoped that, despite his awful parents, Kevin would be on my side. That faint hope was quickly shattered. Since then, I've harbored distrust towards Kevin. Should I continue this marriage? But it's only been half a month since we got married. I wanted to observe for at least a year, feeling obligated to those who attended our wedding. So, I decided to continue with the marriage for the time being. Kevin seemed to calm down after getting angry, and from the next day, he acted normally again. So I could lead a married life without much tension. The following month, the day for another family gathering at my in-laws came. I headed there with determination, wondering how many people I would need to cook for this time. Good morning, Emily.
Come to the kitchen right away.
She was as brusque as ever. I grabbed my apron and went to the kitchen, where I noticed there were fewer ingredients than expected. How many guests are coming today? When I asked, she replied indifferently.
Just 7 today.
7?
Got a problem with that?
No, not at all. I was surprised it was much fewer than last time. With only 7 people, the preparation seemed easier. Thinking this, I began to prepare the meal. While cooking, Emily continued to nitpick and scold me. Despite this, I managed to finish the cooking. And as the relatives arrived one after another, the banquet started. I thought with fewer people, I might have time to eat slowly. But with the smaller crowd, Emily watched me like a hawk, issuing commands whenever I tried to sit. As a result, I didn't get to eat at all or talk to the relatives. Perhaps with more people, I could have found a moment to rest away from her scrutiny. I was more exhausted than before. Sure enough, my husband was focused only on eating and drinking and didn't offer any help. After the party, both Kevin and his father went straight to sleep as if it was the most natural thing, while Emily commanded me to clean up and then rested on the sofa. More tired than ever, I was not allowed to rest at the in-laws and was kicked out again.
Non-family members can stay overnight. You should leave now.
She said, smirking. The idea of staying there was the last thing I wanted. I was so exhausted that I caught a taxi home and immediately fell into bed. Kevin came back the next afternoon and complained.
You're too selfish. Why don't you want to spend time with the family? Going home alone is terrible.
I was flabbergasted by his words. You were passed out drunk, so you wouldn't know, but your mother kicked me out again, saying I'm not part of the family. He was shocked and angry again.
Why do you keep lying? I can't believe you are such a person.
That should have been my line. I was appalled by my husband's terrible attitude, continuing from before. I thought if this happened again, I couldn't take it anymore. About 3 weeks later, Kevin mentioned,
The next family gathering is during Christmas, and it's going to be large. It's hard to prepare food for everyone in the morning, so they want you to make some dishes in advance and bring them.
Okay. I reluctantly agreed, thinking refusing now would only lead to more trouble. So, I prepared lots of dishes the day before the gathering and packed them in containers. Cooking at home spared me from preparing at my in-laws and facing Emily's verbal abuse. I headed to the in-laws just before the relatives arrived. I helped with the setup, and then the relatives started arriving, about 50 in total. Emily took center stage and began speaking to the crowd.
Thank you all for gathering here. We will serve the food shortly, so please enjoy your meal and drinks.
She looked pleased with herself, as if she controlled the whole scene. Then she urged me to bring out the food. I brought the bags with the containers and began to take them out to transfer to serving dishes, but Emily suddenly grabbed a container and exclaimed,
What on earth is this?
What do you mean? It's the stew and fried chicken you asked for.
This common, pathetic food is not fit to serve.
She said that and threw the containers into the trash. What are you doing?
Don't bring me this garbage.
It was too much. She threw away my food in front of all the relatives.
Sorry, everyone. Linda made a mistake. Don't worry, I have ordered some fancy dishes as backup.
So that was her plan all along. Make me cook a lot of food, then throw it away in front of the relatives to embarrass me. She intended to bully me into complete submission. Unbelievable. How could she do such a thing so calmly? I silently cleaned up the food and glared at Emily. I'm leaving, and I won't come back again. And just so you know, I'm filing for divorce. When I said this, my in-laws and Kevin exclaimed, What?
Wait a minute. Linda, divorce? How is this my fault? We've only been married for 3 months. Think about what people will say.
Kevin started to ramble on. If he was like this, I should have divorced him sooner. No, I should never have married him in the first place. At that moment, one of the relatives spoke up.
Can't you see the reason for the divorce coming up so soon is your own doing?
Then another relative chimed in.
Exactly. A husband who doesn't stand up for his wife against his mother is the worst.
Actually, the worst is Emily, who treats Linda terribly, and Kevin and his father, who do nothing about it.
One after another, the relatives voiced their criticisms of the in-laws. My in-laws and husband were shaken by their remarks.
What's happening, everyone?
Emily stammered as the relatives stood up one by one.
We can't stand your tyranny any longer. Frankly, we were fed up with being called to gather every month. We attended because we thought family ties were important. But watching you bully Linda in front of us made us feel terrible. Our family won't be attending these gatherings anymore.
We'll do the same.
The relatives began to stand up and prepared to leave.
Everyone, please wait. Why is this happening?
Emily got panicked. I decided to leave with the relatives.
Linda, I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Kevin pleaded, but a relative sternly reprimanded him on my behalf. Don't bother her. You've done nothing until now. Afterward, I contacted a lawyer and demanded a divorce from him. He seemed reluctant, but when I mentioned going to court, he complied with the divorce. The in-laws were subsequently shunned by all the relatives, and their family gatherings ceased. Emily fell into depression and became reclusive. Meanwhile, my ex-husband became the laughingstock of the neighborhood and his workplace, known as the man who was dumped by his wife after just 3 months. He reportedly faces daily humiliation at work. It serves him right. As for me, I returned to my parents' home and continued working as an office worker. I'm glad I didn't quit my job when I got married. For now, I'm focusing on my work and saving money, avoiding romance or marriage. When I'm ready, I'll slowly start looking for a partner again, ensuring I interact with their family beforehand to know what kind of people they are. Narrator's thoughts. It's appalling how someone could attempt to embarrass someone else by throwing away their cooking in front of family. Emily deserves a harsher punishment. Linda's endured a lot, and it was right to leave that pathetic husband. Hopefully, she'll find a wonderful man next time. I wish her happiness in her future.
Found this among the belongings.
At my grandson's funeral, who passed away from heart disease, a small envelope was handed to me, and on the front, in clumsy writing, was Will. With hesitation, I opened it and found it filled with words of gratitude for his mom and grandma. I continued to read through tears. However, the ending was a shocking revelation.
No, everything written there is a lie, nonsense.
A man cried out in panic. The man's lies, revealed by the will, were met with jeers from those around. My name is Margaret. I lost my husband a few years ago, and now I live with my only son, John, his wife Emily, and my grandson, Alex.
Grandma, I'm home.
Welcome back. Go wash your hands. I've prepared some snacks. Since both are working, I take care of Alex after school. John works at a big corporation and has busy days. Emily finishes her part-time job in the afternoon and helps me prepare dinner every day. Today, while we were cooking, I noticed Alex watching TV in the living room, looking pale.
Hey Alex, are you feeling okay?
Emily rushed over worriedly, and Alex nodded slightly.
I feel a bit of pain in my chest.
A bad feeling struck me as Alex held his chest and tilted his head. Emily, I'm concerned. Maybe we should take him to the doctor tomorrow.
Yes, we should. Alex, let's skip school tomorrow and visit the doctor.
When John came home, I told him about Alex's chest pain, but he dismissed it with a laugh, saying it was an exaggeration.
I often get chest or stomach pains too. Probably just hurt himself playing. You and Emily are such worrywarts.
His somewhat callous words made me realize what a father he was. Despite what John said, Emily and I couldn't ignore Alex's ongoing pale complexion and pain. The next day, we made an appointment and visited the nearby clinic.
It could be a serious illness. I'll write a referral, so get it checked out at another hospital right away.
At the university hospital they were referred to, Alex underwent a detailed examination of his chest and was diagnosed with severe heart disease. He was given a year to live, and hearing this, my world turned pitch black. He's just in elementary school. How could this happen? After that, Emily took a leave from work and started taking turns with me to accompany Alex at the hospital. In contrast, John showed concern for Alex's health, but often came home late due to busy work periods. Sometimes he would be away on business trips for days. Normally, one would expect a father to make time after hearing his son has only a short time left, but John showed no sign of doing so. When he did come home, he often yelled at his wife, Emily, in a condescending tone.
Hey, isn't dinner ready yet? What a drag. I'm tired from work, so hurry up.
Yes.
Emily, possibly worn out from caregiving, seemed much thinner than before. John, oblivious to this, and instead of being understanding, became nastily critical over minor issues. Despite taking turns at the hospital, household tasks inevitably suffered. Unable to prepare food in advance for the unpredictable John, a simple meal would infuriate him.
What's this easy cooking? Can't you make something decent when you're at home all day? What's the point of taking time off work?
Hey, there's no need to talk like that. Taking leave wasn't for housework, it was for Alex's care.
It's okay, Margaret. John is probably just tired from work.
But that's no excuse to talk like that.
Duh, great, I come home to this. If the meal's bad, at least give me a massage to show some appreciation. You really don't get it, do you?
John's commanding demeanor seemed like a different person from before. He wasn't like this as a child. What happened to him? He might be stressed from work and his son's illness. But we're stressed too. In fact, we have to watch Alex's condition worsen day by day, which weighs even heavier on us. Hey John, why don't you show more concern for Alex? You're all about work and hardly visit the hospital. And be a bit nicer to Emily.
Duh, even you, Mom. Of course, I'm worried about my son. But if Emily isn't working, who's going to pay the hospital bills?
We, both Emily and I, were left speechless by John's dismissive response. As dissatisfaction with her son's behavior grew, Alex celebrated his 8th birthday. Though he wasn't allowed to go home, a modest party was held in his hospital room.
Happy birthday, Alex.
You've done so well with your medication and treatments every day. Here's your gift. I handed Alex a large gift box, but his expression was gloomy.
Thank you. But where's Dad? Why doesn't he ever come to see me? I thought he would at least come today.
Alex whispered sadly, his face pale. Of course, I had informed John about today's birthday party well in advance.
I have a business trip that day. I'll buy a gift. Just give it to him.
Don't be ridiculous. Your own son is suffering from illness.
Frustrated by his blatant indifference, Emily finally lost her temper and knelled at John.
Not this again. Uck, this is depressing. I'm not coming home today.
With a sullen look, John quickly left the house. I was fed up with my son. He would flee whenever things got tough. A few days after the birthday party, we were called by Alex's primary doctor.
His condition is worsening. Please make as many memories as you can with him now. He doesn't have much longer.
In front of the somber-faced doctor, we broke down in tears. We immediately informed John over the phone about this reality. Perhaps finally affected by his son's condition, he rushed to the hospital that day. Alex seemed happy to see his father after such a long time. However, the words John spoke to his son were incredibly thoughtless.
It's been a while, Dad's here. Hang in there. It'll be over soon. I'm going to miss you when you're gone.
Thinking he was being encouraging, John's words were so harsh that Emily and I quickly intervened. "Hey, that's no way to speak."
Enough. Just leave now.
We escorted John out of the hospital room, crying. John laughed, saying it's just a joke, but his insensitive words were unforgivable. Alex looked stunned by his father's words.
Doesn't Dad care if I'm gone?
I hugged him, assuring him that wasn't true. However, John's behavior made it clear that he likely had little love left for Alex. After some time, Alex got permission for his first overnight stay at home.
Home is really the best.
In front of Alex, Hugh said joyfully, Emily and I made sure to keep our sadness hidden, acting cheerfully. I wanted to make as many happy memories as possible for him until the end. That's what I thought. However, John's lifestyle didn't change at all, even with his son back home. He seemed to somewhat restrain himself from being harsh to Emily in front of Alex, but he still returned home late and frequently went on business trips. Since that day he spoke thoughtlessly, Alex had been avoiding his father. John, even at home, appeared distracted, constantly on his smartphone. When he received phone calls, he would sneak out to talk. Peeking at him, I saw sloppiness in his expression that I had never seen before. "John, who are you talking to?"
Just work calls.
"But you didn't used to get calls every day like this."
Stop nagging me. It's a busy period, and I have a lot to handle.
His suspicious behavior was too much, but he always evaded my questions. After the homestay, Alex returned to the hospital. He then said he wanted to talk to his father alone. Despite John's terrible behavior, Alex still missed his father. Touched by his request, Emily and I agreed to let them talk privately. When I told John, he looked annoyed, but he couldn't dismiss his son's dying wish and visited the hospital room. I was curious about their conversation, but we left the room, letting John take our place. This was because Alex had previously told us he wanted to have a man-to-man talk and asked us to leave the room when John arrived. I wonder if it's okay. What if he says something thoughtless again?
Yes, and Alex wanting to talk to his dad. What are they discussing?
With these concerns, Emily and I waited in the hospital's waiting room. After about 30 minutes, John finally came out of the hospital room.
Man, that kid is something else. He's got a good eye.
He muttered in a strangely good mood as soon as he left the room. I couldn't understand the meaning of his words. Yet, John's face bore the same sloppy, lax expression as when he was on that phone call. Alex's condition had been stable for a while, but suddenly we received a call from the hospital about a critical change. Emily and I rushed to the hospital. I tried to contact John on the way, but couldn't reach him at all. It seemed he had turned off his phone. By the time Emily and I arrived at the hospital, Alex had already passed away.
Alex, why? Don't leave me behind.
Emily sobbed, clinging to Alex, who lay still on the bed. I stood there, dumbstruck, staring at the scene. Why did an 8-year-old child have to die? We never heard from John that day. I wondered where he was and what he was doing, knowing his son had died. I no longer had the energy to be angry. The next day, as Emily and I were preparing for the visitation, John finally returned, saying he had to leave soon for an important business trip. I couldn't believe his nerve, prioritizing work over his son's funeral. What are you thinking? Your son has died.
I feel bad about it, too. But I can't just leave a gap in my work.
No matter how much we pressed, John seemed distant and eventually left as he was. During the visitation, I stared at Alex's face in the coffin, motionless. Now, I just want to send Alex peacefully to heaven. Despite the sudden notice, many relatives came to say goodbye at the funeral the next day. Among them, my brother, Sam, who had adored Alex dearly in life, was deeply saddened.
Margaret, you've been so strong. It must have been tough.
My brother said, comforting me, before suddenly looking around, as if he noticed something was off.
But why isn't John, the father, here at this place?
He had to go on a business trip. At that, my brother, Sam, instantly looked stern.
His own son has died and he's off on business. What is he thinking?
Angry, Sam grabbed his smartphone and started making a call.
Hey John, where are you? Is work more important than your son's funeral?
His angry shout echoed through the funeral home.
No, that's not it. I told Emily and Mom I'd be late to the funeral.
John replied, making excuses, but of course, Emily and I hadn't heard anything like that.
Stop the nonsense and come here now.
John, who was always intimidated by Sam, arrived at the funeral home a few hours later, likely spurred by the scolding. When John arrived late, he was met with cold stares from us and the other relatives. I thought he might behave quietly due to the awkwardness, but John sneaked out even during the funeral preparations. I was furious with my son. He was supposed to be the organizer for his son's funeral, but was absent-minded. Following him, I caught him on his phone, having a conversation. Who would contact him during his child's funeral? I eavesdropped quietly.
Sorry for the change of plans. I'll make it up next time. Yay, I want to see you soon too.
He said light-heartedly, not sounding like a bereaved father. What's going on? Who is he talking to?
Yeah, now that the nuisance is gone, we can finally be free. Let's be together as soon as I get a divorce. I love you.
The phrase nuisance is gone was shocking to hear. I hurried back to my spot, careful not to reveal I had overheard him. From his words, it was probably a woman he was speaking to. The thought of the worst possible scenario made me feel sick. I hope I'm wrong, but if this suspicion is true, I cannot forgive him, even if he is my son. That's what I thought. After the funeral, we served food to the gathered relatives and mourners in the large hall. John, who had cruelly seemed pleased about his own son's death, was there too, looking unfazed. Everyone was in a somber mood, reminiscing about John when Emily returned after stepping out for a moment.
Margaret, please look at this. I found it while sorting through Alex's belongings.
She said with a puzzled look, handing me a small envelope. It appeared to have come from a treasure box Alex cherished. The envelope was clumsily labeled "Will" in a child's handwriting. I was struck by the word. To think that an 8-year-old child had contemplated his own mortality and written a message for someone after his death. The thought was heart-wrenching, and tears flowed again. Taking it from Emily, I read it aloud in front of the family. Alex's will first expressed gratitude to Emily and me. He wrote about how happy he was that we visited him in the hospital every day, and although his illness was painful, he was able to endure because we were there. Emily was sobbing. I continued reading through tears. There was no mention of gratitude toward John, but towards the end, the will finally addressed Dad. "What is this? What's going on?" It revealed John had been having an affair with a younger woman for years. Here's how Alex found out about the affair. Alex came to know about the affair before his heart condition was discovered, when John was in the bath and his phone rang. John answered it innocently and heard a young woman's voice calling John's name, saying, "I love you, I want to see you again," and mentioning she was waiting for the day he would leave his wife. At the time, Alex didn't understand, but as he grew older, he realized that it might have been John's mistress on the phone.
Dad, I know. You're meeting another woman, aren't you?
On the day Alex had us leave the room to talk man to man with John, he confronted his father about the call, the woman's voice, and her words of love. John panicked when his affair was mentioned.
What are you talking about?
It's okay, you don't have to hide it. You're quite popular, huh? I kind of admire that. What's she like? I want to see her.
Initially wary of being exposed, John relaxed when he realized Alex wasn't threatening to reveal the affair and began talking about his mistress cheerfully.
There are many photos of her on Dad's phone. Check them. They're the proof.
The will concluded.
What the?
Sam exclaimed in disbelief. All the relatives were murmuring. John, panicked, tried to flee, but Sam forcefully grabbed his shoulder and snatched the smartphone from his hand.
Give it back. It's all lies. Are you going to believe a child?
We'll see if it's lies once we look at this.
Sam retorted coldly to the flustered John. After accessing the phone, Sam sighed heavily.
Take a look at this.
And then showed us the screen. There were numerous photos of John intimately with a young woman, just as Alex had written in his will. Some images were too compromising to be dismissed as mere friendship. John had indeed been meeting this woman, lying about working instead of seeing his sick son. You were talking to this woman on the phone earlier, right? I heard everything. The nuisance is gone, you said. Learning that John had indeed referred to Alex as a nuisance fueled my anger.
Unforgivable. To cheat and then trample so thoroughly on the hearts of me and Alex.
The family surrounding John began to hurl insults at him. His pale face made excuses, but no one was willing to listen.
I had been planning to leave Emily even before we knew about Alex's illness. Then we found out about it. Wouldn't my reputation have suffered if I had left you all then? I'm the one who's been paying the hospital bills. Isn't that enough?
His outrageous words nearly made my blood vessels burst in anger. Shut up, always thinking about yourself. It should have been you in that coffin. Later, everyone present became witnesses, and with the undeniable evidence from the smartphone data, John and Emily proceeded with the divorce.
It's your fault for always caring for Alex and neglecting me.
John continued with his absurd excuses, prompting Emily to demand a significant amount in alimony through her lawyer. Despite him being my own son, my patience had run out, and I severed ties with John. After being kicked out of our home, John tried to move in with his mistress. But in reality, his mistress was an industrial spy aiming to steal secrets from his major corporation. John, while dating her, had carelessly talked about critical confidential information. Of course, the woman had no intention of staying with him and easily discarded him once she got what she needed. Following the leak of information to a rival company, John was fired for his role in the breach. Conversely, Emily, though initially shattered by Alex's loss, recently returned to her job, revitalized.
Alex would laugh if he saw his mom forever sad,
she said with a resolved smile. Using the grief of losing Alex as a driving force, she seems to be even more dedicated to her work than before. After being dumped by his mistress and disowned, John came to me for help. Since I had been blocking his calls, he came to the house, but I turned him away at the gate.
Please, Mom, I have no one else.
After what you've done to Alex and Emily, you dare ask this? Never cross our threshold again. You're no longer my son to me. John apologized, crying, but I could never forgive him for Alex's sake.
Margaret, over here.
Emily waved me over at the coffee shop where we met. Even after the divorce from John, we continued to meet frequently for coffee and outings. Years later, as we had coffee,
I have good news to share.
I have a feeling there's some good news coming.
I've been focusing on my work since Alex passed away, and because of my performance, I've become the first female executive at my company.
Congratulations, that's wonderful news for Alex to hear. I think she really worked hard, being the first woman to reach a management position at her company. Later, we plan to visit Alex's grave. Still mourning his loss, yet determined to live our lives in a way that would make him proud.
Wait. Jake. Elise. Seeing Elise and Jake suddenly at my house, I was shocked. It had been 9 years since they had eloped. What could they possibly want now? They barged into the house. Don't just walk in. What do you want? Ignoring my attempt to stop them, Elise, her face twisted in ugliness, shouted.
I'm going back with my husband to his parents' house. You, get out of the house.
I didn't understand what she meant. I was dumbfounded. But the house has been demolished and the lot is empty, you know.
Huh?
Both of them stood there, stunned. It can't be helped. I have to tell them the truth, or they might not leave. I started to tell my story. At this, Elise and Jake fell completely silent. My name is Kimberly Norris. I'm turning 38 this year. 10 years ago, at the age of 28, I married Jake, a high school classmate of mine. Jake, who worked at a local home improvement store, was quiet and serious by nature. We clicked because I, too, am not much of a talker. We began living together in an apartment, and I gradually got better at cooking, which I had initially struggled with. We were leading a peaceful, everyday life, starting to talk about wanting kids soon. I think I was definitely just an ordinary housewife. I believed that the rest of my life would be ordinary but happy. That's what I thought. That belief was shattered 9 years ago, when I was 29. Jake had run off with Elise, my former best friend, and they disappeared. Their whereabouts are still unknown. Why did this happen? I kept asking myself that over and over again. And the thought that always came to mind was that I shouldn't have gone to that class reunion. If only I hadn't run into Elise again. That was how I felt. Since that day, the gears of our fate had started to turn. Ever since I was young, I had a best friend named Elise. I was reserved, while Elise was flashy and assertive. Though our personalities were opposites, we somehow got along and went to the same public high school. Just like in middle school, Elise and I would walk to and from school together. Then, another person joined us. That was Jake. Jake came from a different middle school, but because we shared the same school bus, we naturally started commuting together. Back then, the three of us would often indulge in idle chatter after school. Hey, what are you going to do after graduation? I'm thinking of getting a job locally.
I'll do the same. Looks like I might get a recommendation.
Many from our high school ended up working in the local town after graduation. But Elise was different.
You guys lack ambition. I'm going to the city to attend a cosmetology school. Then I'll be a makeup artist for celebrities.
Even back then, Elise was highly ambitious. She was fired up about studying beauty seriously and diving into the glamorous world. After graduation, Jake and I started our careers. Elise went on to a cosmetology school and then got a job at a hair and makeup salon. Around this time, when Elise would visit home, we often hung out together.
What? You two are dating?
Sorry, I should have told you sooner. I felt somewhat embarrassed and looked down. Jake's workplace was near mine, and sometimes after work, we'd go out to eat together. That's how things gradually progressed between us.
No, it's rather late, actually. I was worried when you two would finally get together. So, marriage next.
What about you, Elise?
Jake, his face turning red, ribbed Elise. Elise brightly said,
I'm still scoping out the right guy. The mixer the other night was so much fun. There were heirs to big companies, pilots, lawyers, you name it. I'm having a hard time deciding who to choose.
Elise seemed to be leading a flashy life, heading out every night. It was an exciting and fun story, but in retrospect, it felt like a fairy tale from a distant world. And now, 10 years have passed since we graduated high school. Jake and I are in our 10th year of working. Both our careers were going well, and soon the topic of marriage came up. Jake's parents were very kind and they adored me.
Jake is an only child, you know. It's like I'm getting a daughter if he marries you. Kimberly, I'm really happy about that.
Erica, my mother-in-law, would say with a smile that I still remember vividly. As a result, I naturally became closer to Jake's family, and I found myself spending less and less time playing with Elise. It couldn't be helped. Elise was living a glamorous life in the city, and I was about to start a family. Our life rhythms were just too different. It was a bit lonely, but drifting apart was unavoidable. Then what I thought. That's what I was thinking when I received an email about our high school reunion. Maybe I'd get to see Elise after a long time. Jake and I were looking forward to reconnecting with our old classmates. Finally, the day of the reunion arrived. It was held in a hotel banquet hall. As I reminisced about our high school days, I felt a bit giddy, and then Elise appeared. Elise was dressed more glamorously than before, looking much more mature. But there was something off about her expression. She seemed too flashy, somehow. Though she had always been assertive, she used to be approachable too. But now, that had vanished, and she seemed to exude an aura that was almost intimidating. I was a bit uneasy, but when we greeted each other, Elise immediately smiled. While enjoying the buffet, we caught up on each other's lives.
So, you two are finally getting married. Congratulations. It's been a long time coming.
Thank you. How have you been doing, Elise?
Me, I'm doing great, both in love and work.
Listening to Elise's story, it seems she is dating a successful entrepreneur who owns several businesses. Their romance started when she did his makeup at the salon where she works. Elise spoke animatedly about her glamorous city life. I felt somewhat overwhelmed, more so than before. It was great to see my best friend again, and it seemed like both of our lives were going well. Normally, this would make me happy. Yet, I felt uneasy. The fog in my heart did not clear up easily. After that, we started hanging out with Elise again as a trio. Elise had been busy with work, but as things settled down, she began contacting us more frequently. Soon, however, I started feeling uneasy. Elise's makeup became heavier over time. And the places we ate at changed from regular diners to dimly lit bars. Next to the bar was a dance floor, where loud, flashy music blared. There were plenty of flashy men and women dressed in provocative, scanty outfits. Feeling uncomfortable, I hesitantly approached Elise. Hey, I appreciate the introduction, but could we maybe go somewhere a bit more peaceful?
What? That's so boring, Kimberly. You're such a kid.
As I hesitated, Elise began to look down on me with a clear disdain.
Come on, Jake. Let's dance.
Ignoring me, Elise pulled Jake onto the dance floor.
I'm embarrassed.
Despite his words, Jake was dragged along and started dancing. It was so clumsy that it was embarrassing to watch. But Jake was different from me. He seemed to have a desire to try glamorous things that we couldn't do back home. Watching Jake dance enthusiastically, I couldn't help feeling somewhat upset. After that, I started to decline Elise's invitations. I felt like we were living in different worlds. But Elise kept inviting me persistently.
How long are you going to be such a goody two-shoes? That kind of life is boring. Kimberly, you're so uptight. You're not very charming as a person. You need to let loose.
Her mocking remarks increased. Because of this, I became even less inclined to join Elise's outings. First off, I was already busy with work and family life. I couldn't just hang out all the time like Elise. Surely Jake wouldn't neglect his work and family just to dive into that lifestyle. That's what I thought, but Jake has been going to the city every weekend to hang out with Elise. Lately you've been coming home late, haven't you? You're also gone on the weekends. Did Elise invite you again?
Sorry.
He would apologize, but he seemed nonchalant about it. I sighed. I've kept quiet because Elise is a friend and I trusted you, but we're married now. Hanging out with other women. I'm not really okay with that. To which Jake casually replied.
What are you talking about? It's not just Elise. Recently, her boyfriend has been joining us.
Elise's boyfriend? The businessman you mentioned?
Yeah. He's a bit older than us, but he's really cool and sophisticated. I totally admire him.
Oh, really? I had seen a photo of Elise's boyfriend on her phone before. He's a burly man with a beard, the intimidating type. He's not someone you'd typically find in our social circles. I felt a bit relieved that it wasn't just the two of them, but it didn't change the fact that Jake was still going out. Just because there's someone else doesn't mean it's okay for you to go out. I take the time to make dinner, and if you don't eat it soon, I can't clean up.
What's the big deal? You should come too, Kimberly. Let's all have fun together.
Jake said with a smile, but I felt uneasy. Typically, Jake is shy and, like me, on the quieter side. He was never one for flashy entertainment. Something was off. But I gathered my courage and firmly said, "That's not the point. I'm not going, and I wish you'd stop getting so caught up in it too." Despite my words, Jake's behavior didn't improve. If anything, his spending seemed to have gotten more reckless.
Kimberly, I'm out of money. Can you lend me some?
What? You just got paid. What are you spending it on?
For happiness, you know?
He said, smiling cheerfully. Come to think of it, even his dress sense has changed completely recently. He started wearing flashy leather jackets with embroidery and styling his hair with wax more often. He used to be indifferent to fashion. Now, he's starting to resemble Elise's boyfriend. I felt uncomfortable. Maybe it was because I sensed that Jake was drifting into a world unknown to me. Time passed while I harbored these unsettled feelings. But I couldn't just let things be. Even I, usually so reserved, must speak up this time. Resolved, I picked up the phone to call Elise. Hello, Elise?
Kimberly, what's up?
I'm going to get straight to the point. I want you to stop leading my husband astray. Elise chuckled upon hearing this.
Leading astray? That sounds so sinister. We're just having fun together. You should join us, Kimberly.
No thanks, I'll pass. We have our own lives. We can't just play around forever. Elise responded with heightened enthusiasm, almost singing.
What are you talking about? Let's break free from that boring life and have fun.
What? What are you talking about? This is getting nowhere. Just stop inviting Jake, okay? After hanging up, I felt uneasy about Elise's behavior. Jake, too, has been acting strangely high-spirited lately. One moment he was all smiles, the next he started getting angry. He seemed emotionally unstable. He was often distracted, and his mumbling to himself has become more frequent. I found myself getting angry alone more often, and it's becoming exhausting. Then, suddenly, the day came. Jake didn't come home all night. I stayed up all night waiting for him, but even when morning came, he still hadn't returned. This had never happened before. Something must have happened. I called him repeatedly, but couldn't get through. Since he had been seeing Elise frequently lately, I thought maybe he was with her, and so, I called Elise's cell phone. But there was no connection. That's when it happened. I received an email on my phone.
Sorry, Kimberly. I've come to like the cheerful Elise more than being with you, always sullen at home. Every day is fun with Elise. I can't stand living with you anymore. The divorce papers are in my desk drawer. Please file them. Goodbye.
As soon as I read the message, my mind went blank. What is this? Words just slipped out of my mouth. My mind was in turmoil, and I could barely stand. What does this mean? I want to talk this through. Even though I sent emails back, there was no reply. Finally, it was noon. I contacted Jake's office. He had been at work until the previous day, but they said he hadn't shown up. I reported his absence and explained the situation to Jake's boss. Please let me know if you find out anything. After I said that, I hung up the phone. I then called his parents. Both were shocked when I explained the situation and said he wasn't with them either.
Stay calm, Kimberly. I'm sure he'll come back soon.
Erica said gently, but I was panicking completely. Knowing it might be futile, I tried calling Elise's cell phone again. But, of course, there was no callback. That's when an idea suddenly hit me. Elise's parents lived in the next town over, if I remembered correctly. I pulled out an old address book and called their home. However, Elise's parents also said, "We haven't been able to contact our daughter recently." I was nearly losing my mind. I immediately went to the police station. I showed them the email and explained everything in detail. But the police officer's response was sluggish.
Is it a case of elopement?
Hearing that word again made me dizzy. Please, start searching right away. In a near frenzy, I pleaded. The officer spoke to me in a calming tone.
Well, if they were minors, it'd be one thing, but they are both adults, right? If there's no sign of foul play, it falls under the category of voluntary disappearance. I'm sorry, but it's difficult to launch a major investigation. However, we will register it in the police database, and if they are spotted, we will contact you.
Is that so? Please, do what you can. With that, I dragged my tired body back home. It was already getting dark. Just a few months ago, we were living peacefully. Why did this have to happen? Thinking back, I knew Jake and Elise were hanging out, but I fully believed him when he said her boyfriend was also with them. Could that have been a lie? A pretext for infidelity? Shocked, I stood still in the living room. Jake's belongings, which he had been using until the day before, were still there. I just couldn't believe he had disappeared from my life. Where did you go? As I muttered to myself, tears rolled down my cheek. 9 years have passed since then. For a while after that, I waited for Jake to come back. But after 6 months had passed, persuaded by my parents, I submitted the divorce papers that had been kept in my desk drawer. We concluded that he wasn't coming back. Jake, of course, had been fired from his job. Since the elopement incident, I had started to fall ill more often, becoming increasingly absent from work. I think the stress had been building up without me realizing it. During this time, my in-laws were the ones who helped me.
I'm truly sorry about what our Jake has done.
They apologized repeatedly, and despite their own pain, they took great care of me. Thanks to my in-laws' compassion, I was able to recover. I continued to maintain a relationship with them. And then, they asked me for a favor. Now, my health has significantly improved. I've returned to work and am back to my regular routine. It was on one of those days. Despite it being an early holiday morning, the sound of knocking on the front door echoed loudly. It seemed too early for a delivery. Half asleep, I went to the door, only to find an unbelievable sight. Wait. Jake. Elise. I froze upon seeing the two of them.
Kimberly, why are you here? Isn't this Jake's parents' house?
Elise and Jake looked puzzled. 9 years had passed, but there they were, the two who were supposed to have eloped and disappeared. Their eyes were bloodshot and unnaturally bright. Moreover, they were wearing clothes as ragged as old rags, and there seemed to be a smell coming from them. Could it be that they haven't taken a bath? What kind of life had they been living? What do you mean, why am I here? That's my line. Where have you been all this time? What are you doing here? Confused, I yelled out.
Well, there were some complications. Oh, and thanks to you smoothly signing the divorce papers, I could marry Jake right away. Thanks.
What? I couldn't believe how casually Elise spoke. After disappearing with someone else's husband, Her demeanor was far too light.
By the way, where's Mom and Dad? Where did they go?
Jake and Elise barged into the house. Hey, don't just walk in. Ignoring my attempt to stop them, Jake loudly called for my in-laws. But no matter how much they looked, it was futile. They aren't here.
Where are they? And why are you at my parents' house? Where's Mom and Dad?
Both of their eyes were fixated in an unnatural way. I was momentarily taken aback by their bizarre demeanor, but I gathered my courage and managed to speak. Before that, can you explain why you have returned now, after all this time? At my words, Elise twisted her face into an ugly sneer and yelled,
I'm moving back with my husband to his parents' house. You, get out.
I was dumbfounded. But the house has been demolished and the lot is empty, you know.
Huh?
Huh?
There was a palpable sense of confusion between us.
The lot? My parents' house is right here, isn't it?
Yes, let's have a serious talk.
I was fed up, but it seemed like they wouldn't leave without hearing the truth. Reluctantly, I began to speak. After they had eloped, my in-laws had bought a second-hand property in a remote rural village and moved there. They had always said that after retiring, they wanted to retreat to the countryside. There, they lived quietly, tending to a vegetable garden. So, if we are talking about where my in-laws lived, that rural house might be more rightly called Jake's parents' home now. My in-laws, concerned about my health, would often send me vegetables. I also called them frequently, maintaining our relationship, albeit modestly. However, those days did not last long. Years later, something happened on one particular day. A tragic accident occurred on a rural road where a car, driven recklessly, veered onto the sidewalk. Unfortunately, my in-laws were the victims. They were hit by the car on their way back from shopping. Though they survived, both sustained serious injuries. Didn't you hear about it last year? A young person, high on illegal drugs, was driving recklessly. Perhaps it was my imagination, but both seemed to pale and fell silent upon hearing this. At that time, it was hard to believe such a dangerous incident could happen in the countryside where my in-laws lived. However, it turned out that a festival attracting young people was held in a remote area. It appears that illegal drugs were being circulated there. A young person who attended a festival took drugs and drove while still high. It seems an accident occurred as a result. Subsequently, due to their injuries worsening, my in-laws found it difficult to continue living in the countryside. Since the insurance money from the accident had been paid out, they decided it might be better to move into a facility. Hearing this, I thought of my in-laws, who had no one else but Jake. They had always been concerned about me. Even after Jake disappeared, they were incredibly supportive. After much deliberation, I finally made up my mind. I began visiting the facility frequently, taking care of them on behalf of Jake. The fact that the apartment I previously lived in was near the facility also pushed me to act. My in-laws were very grateful to me. Jake was a late child for them, and they were older than my own parents. Unable to move themselves, they asked me to handle the disposal of their country house, among other things. They reasoned, it's unlikely we'll return from the facility now. As I took care of various matters, my in-laws apologized to me repeatedly.
We're really sorry, always.
Since Jake disappeared, you've been a great help, Kimberly. We're so grateful, but we feel terrible for disrupting your life. We can't apologize enough.
Please, don't worry about it. I would respond each time. However, my in-laws couldn't accept that. Considering everything, including the care I was providing on top of Jake's disappearance, they felt they couldn't face me properly. Eventually, they began to talk about transferring the house they used to live in to me.
We've disposed of the country house, but we've kept the old house as it is. I always felt like Jake might come back. I couldn't bring myself to sell it.
Erica said this with a lonely look, appearing much older than usual. They think of me as their daughter, so they want to entrust me with this house, they told me. Of course, they added that I could sell it if I didn't want it. I hesitated, but being put in this position, I couldn't refuse.
It's the least we can do to make it up to you, Kimberly.
I was already considering moving out of the apartment where Jake and I had lived, so I agreed to take over the house. I did some minor remodeling, and that's where I live now. After I finished telling them, both of them fell silent.
I can't believe it. Mom and Dad.
Jake looked especially pale and visibly shaken. Perhaps he was remembering his parents. From his previously intense gaze, there seemed to be a slight return to sanity. In contrast, Elise started yelling loudly.
That's not what we agreed on, Jake. I thought we were going to hide out at Erica and Ken's place.
At Elise's words, I frowned. Hide out? What do you mean? Now it's your turn to explain. But Elise just turned away dismissively. As usual, it was impossible to have a proper conversation. Instead, Jake, reluctantly, began to speak. From here, the truth behind their elopement started to unfold. The boyfriend Elise had boasted about at the reunion 9 years ago. His identity was shocking. His name was Andy. Though he claimed to be a businessman, it was a complete lie. Andy was involved with antisocial forces, dealing in illegal drugs as his business. Initially, Elise too had been deceived by Andy's claim of being a businessman. But by the time she learned the truth, Elise had already been completely enamored with him. She quit her job at the beauty salon and decided to start a business with Andy. They called it a business, but in reality, it was selling drugs in the underworld, a completely illegal operation. Initially, the money flowed well, and it seemed like a lucrative job. They indulged in branded clothes and gourmet food. Elise was living the glamorous city life she had always dreamed of. Gradually, Elise and Andy wanted to sell drugs to more people. That's when they targeted our high school reunion. We, being from a small town and rather naive, were seen as easy targets. However, I began to feel uneasy and distanced myself from Elise. Then, they shifted their focus to Jake. Andy came along and got on good terms with Jake, who then fell into the urban nightlife. Soon, Jake was approached with the drug business and quickly got involved. Like Elise, he started dealing on a small scale. However, they eventually struggled to sell their stock. To cover the unsold drugs, they bought them themselves, gradually accruing debt. That's why Jake mentioned having no money back then. Jake and Elise discussed their situation with Andy.
There's a place where you can earn more.
Andy then began to elaborate. It was an isolated island where plants used for illegal drugs were cultivated. A final destination for dealers who couldn't sell their drugs. It was not a job opportunity, but rather a dumping ground for failed dealers. Deceived, the two were forced to cultivate illegal plants there. Gradually, the criminal organization grew larger. People in similar circumstances were continually sent to the island. Of course, the existence of this criminal organization could not be made public. As a cover, under Andy's direction, the email saying, "Elise and I have decided to elope," was sent to me. I was completely deceived by it. Even if I went to the police, they would dismiss it as just an elopement, never reaching the organization cultivating illegal plants. They had planned it that meticulously. On that island, there were a few villagers who had been living there long before. To avoid suspicion, Jake and his group had to pretend to be couples who had moved from the mainland. That's why they claimed to have gotten married. This was also under Andy's instruction. That's why Elise referred to Jake as her husband. As soon as this topic came up, Elise raised her voice angrily.
I only married Jake for convenience. I only truly love Andy.
But I later learned that there were many women like that on that isolated island. Elise was just one of the women Andy was keeping around. Deceived by Andy, Elise and Jake ended up marrying as a cover and reluctantly started working there. 9 years passed, and recently rumors spread on the island. There were rumors that the place where illegal plants were being cultivated might be raided by the police. Jake said with a pained expression.
Maybe. Remember the car rampage that you mentioned earlier that hurt Mom and Dad? The illegal drugs the driver had taken might have been made from the plants we were growing. That might have triggered the investigation that's reaching the island now.
What? The organization's members, fearing arrest, scattered in all directions. Elise and others came here hoping Jake's parents would hide them, which is why they visited this place. I was speechless, never expecting such a truth. The room fell silent for a while. But Elise, inappropriate to the somber atmosphere, raised her voice loudly.
Hey, hide us, Kimberly. This house is yours now, right? Then it should be easy. Come on, do it. Otherwise, we'll get arrested by the police. Let bygones be bygones.
What? What are you saying? After you took Jake away, and now a drug cultivation crime too. How can I hide criminals like you? Enough is enough. I'm so fed up with you. Angrily, I confronted her, and Elise grimaced.
Come on, don't be so stingy.
With that, she spread her arms out towards me.
Then we're going to skip the country, so give us some money.
What?
Andy's planning to flee overseas too. We'll all meet up there. This time, we're all going to enjoy living abroad. Isn't that super happy?
By this point, it was all beyond my comprehension. Surely, what these two were involved in wasn't limited to just dealing and growing. They must have been using the drugs themselves. Their tattered clothes, unwashed bodies, and vacant expressions. They didn't look normal from any angle. Suddenly, I was terrified. Of course, I couldn't hide them, nor could I give them any money. But, especially with Elise, communication was completely impossible. Considering they were drug addicts, I had to handle the situation carefully.
Come on, hurry up and give us the money. We're going to have a vacation in the tropics.
Elise then began to make a scene, yelling loudly. Exhausted from talking, Jake just slumped down, staring blankly at one spot. All right. Seeing their condition, I sighed. But I don't have any cash on hand. I'll have to withdraw it from the bank. Can you wait a bit?
Yay, that's our Kimberly. You really get it. We're like best friends, aren't we?
Elise's words almost made me nauseous. I took my smartphone, wallet, and house keys and stepped outside. After making sure the front door was securely closed, I hid in the shadows and called the police on my phone. Hello, police? Please come quickly. Drug addicts have entered my house. The address is. Within 5 minutes, the police arrived. The two were first arrested for breaking and entering. As they were taken to the police station, Jake still seemed lethargic, barely managing to walk. In contrast, Elise continued to scream in high spirits.
Kimberly, where did you go, Kimberly? We're best friends, right? Hurry up and give me the money.
Elise's loud, nonsensical shouting was unbearable to watch. Does she even realize that she's being taken away by the police? Given the situation, it seemed unlikely they would be coming out anytime soon. Watching the figures of Elise, who was once my best friend, and Jake, my former husband, I felt a profound sadness. Later at the police station, both were tested for drugs. The results were unequivocally positive. They faced charges for breaking and entering, illegal drug use, and manufacturing and selling drugs. They were sentenced to 9 years in prison. That's the same amount of time that had passed since their disappearance. But it wasn't just Elise and Jake who were arrested. One by one, other members of the organization were also caught. That includes Andy, Elise's boyfriend. He was about to flee the country but was apprehended by police at the airport. It turns out Andy was indeed part of an antisocial force and the mastermind behind this operation. He skillfully sold drugs, manipulated people, and brought them to the isolated island. They were forced to work in deplorable conditions, cultivating illegal plants. Once on the island, since nearly all their money was taken, escape became impossible. Their smartphones were confiscated too. That completely cut off any contact with the outside world. It was a cunning setup. The drugs that had recently become popular among the youth seemed to have originated mostly from plants cultivated there. Although the police had trouble catching anyone initially, the investigation progressed due to the accident involving my in-laws. Furthermore, the statements from Elise and Jake, which I had reported, helped gather a significant amount of information. However, by then, Elise was barely coherent. She was continually crying and yelling, making communication difficult. Jake seemed somewhat more coherent. Occasionally, he would even speak words of remorse through tears. There's no doubt he was regretting everything now. But it was too late. Elise was deceived by a shady man from the city and fell into a life of crime. Jake, too, was easily duped by Elise and Andy. They were both dazzled by the allure of a glamorous life and lost sight of themselves, a pitiful end to their story. It's true, at some point, everyone might dream of such a glittering existence. I can understand that sentiment. However, such a life always has its shadows. They were swallowed by those shadows, never to return. Now, I live a peaceful life. I work daily, watch movies on weekends, and lead a very ordinary life. I still visit the facility where my in-laws reside frequently. I've requested the staff to ensure they don't show any TV news or newspapers to them, especially not about their son. The return of their only son might have been a joyful event, but his immediate arrest must have been a shock. Moreover, they would not want to believe that the illegal drugs he cultivated indirectly caused the accident they were involved in. Today is a rare day for a walk in the facility's garden. I push the wheelchair slowly. My in-laws smile joyfully. And though this is all I can do, I hope for peaceful days ahead. I push the wheelchair more firmly, filled with